Good morning, everyone. This is the October 17th, 2023 Board of the County Commissioners. Do I have a motion on the Clerk General?
So moved.
And yes, and there's a couple of requisitions today.
And they're fine.
And yes. And,
I have one to add on.
okay,
Have a resolution to appoint Susan Walther, Deputy County Administrator, as the Executive Director of Jobs and Family Services, effective October 16th, 2023.
So moved.
and yes.
And that's all that I have.
And welcome Susan Walther. She's in the back.
Yeah, there you
We're
are.
excited to have you officially here. And we're gonna make you work for it all. The gig is up. Okay, so with that, we'll turn to our next item of business, which is our Investment Advisory Board meeting. Good to see you today. Thank you for sending that stuff in advance. I always find it very, very helpful.
Thank you. I really, we're tooling along well. We are not following the pattern established by the Treasurer of State. We're not buying additional bonds issued by the State of Israel, but we do have an investment of about $3.5 million in bonds issued by Israel. We bought them when the yields were extremely attractive, and we're continuing to hold those. Other than that, there's nothing that looks like anything of any controversy that I am aware of in the portfolio. I do have a request from Meter to switch from a fixed monthly fee to a fee that's based on the average market value of the portfolio, which means it'll go up and down. They would prefer to do that. I'm comfortable with that. I think that that then they get paid for how big the portfolio is or how small it is as it fluctuates. And so it would be my intention to adopt that unless the advisory committee has extremely strong opinions against it. It's the normal way that investment management, across the industry, that's the way it's normally done. The Meter acquired the firm that when we first hired an investment advisory firm, they offered us this fixed rate thing. That was the way that firm operated. Meter acquired that firm shortly after we started with them, and they kept with their original agreement, the original agreement we had with the predecessor firm until now, which has been, what, 5 years, something close to that. So that's the only thing of any controversy or interest that I have, and wanted to let the rest of the advisory committee know about that. And other than that, I have nothing unless you have questions for me.
Oh, no, very good. Barney, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for being here today.
Do we need a motion to make that happen?
I think it's
In your discretion.
But
You wanted to let us know.
information for the committee.
Absolutely.
Great.
Good discretion.
Thank you.
I will say I discussed it with Matt Nolan. He's in favor of moving in this direction also. So I think we're all on the same page here.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. With that, we are right on schedule here at 9:05 with a work session with Chris Broush, our sanitary engineer.
Good morning. I appreciate the time you have for us today. I'm trying to think back. It's been like, I'd say 4 years or so since we last sat down with the board and talked about rates. And so I think that may be the last time, 3 or 4 years ago, the last time we adopted some rate changes. And at this point, we're running to the end of our rate increases, our rate schedule. So it's about that time that we sit down, kind of talk about the finances of the department, and what our funds look like financially, and what we're projecting in the future, and then talk about how that would impact rates. So what we've done is we put together a small presentation that kind of goes over our finances, talks about some of the recommended improvements, where we fall within like a survey of other communities around us, and at the end, you'll see some recommendations from our department as far as where we'd like to go in the near future. Let's start off by talking about our mission statement. And it's always good when you take a look at rates is to start with our mission statement and what our goals and objectives are. So as the Water and Sewer Department, we strive to provide quality water service to Warren County residents in a cost-effective manner, to treat all customers with respect, courtesy, and professionalism, and to provide the highest quality of customer service possible. So really, we try to focus on cost. We want to provide a good value. So cost is a component of that value, providing strong service to our customers and quality water to our customers. So that's really our focus, is providing quality service at a reasonable cost. And so everything we do tries to focus on that. We'd like to take a look first at where we've been in the past with our rates and what we did at our last rate increases. Back in 2020, the county had a different rate structure. Back at that time, we had a flat fee that was on the bills. It was $7.50 a bill. Our water rates back in 2020 increased by 3%, and increased in 21 and 22 by the same amount, 3%. And back in 2021, we took off, the board elected to take off the $7.50 per bill, the flat fee off of our water bill. So our customers actually saw a rate decrease in 2021, our water customers did. Back in our sewer rates have been very steady. They've been very flat. We have not had a rate increase on our sewer since 2016. So we've gone roughly 7-8 years without a rate increase. Where we would like to go based off our finances is we will need some rate increases. So we're looking at putting on a base fee of $5 a bill on our water side. We'd like to implement that this year, coming in 2024. We'd like to do 7.5% rate increases on the water side, and we'll explain why here in the near future. In the next couple slides, you'll see why we're asking for these rates, all right? And then on the sewer side, we're looking at a base bill of $3.50 along with a 7% rate increase in 2024, a 5% rate increase in 2025, and then a 3% in 2026. Okay, so let me explain. Let me first talk about how these rate increases impact our customers when you look at how we compare to other communities. And then we're going to explain why we're looking at these rate increases, okay?
What is when you talk about the base amount, that's the base amount times what? A gallon of?
No gallon,
water?
no, this is just a base fee that's on the bill
It's
service.
just $5 each month.
Right. No,
Or-
we bill bi-monthly. So
Bi-monthly, so it'd be
$5
$5
times
for-
6 is $30 a year that our customers
So
would
you
pay
actually just put $5
as a base fee.
bi-monthly, just as a fee. It's not a base fee, it's not a base of anything.
Yeah, it is like for service. You can call it a flat fee or base fee. It's pretty common for other communities to structure their rates this way, that you have a base fee, and that base fee oftentimes covers your minimum cost, your minimum cost.
But your
to
other
keep the
rate,
doors
your other rate is all based upon the amount of water you use.
Right, and that's what you see with the rate increases, where you see right now, we are at $4.56 per 1,000 gallons.
So here's my meaning is, so in other words, the base fee is just a way of getting more money from somebody. And of course, everybody who is paying these rates pays more than that. In other words, it's not like, like maybe somebody's never using water in a month and it would be zero, but we'll have that base fee and so we're gonna charge them something. The fact is, the $5 or whatever you're gonna be doing is is just an added-on fee, not a
It
base
is,
fee.
it is a fee, so we'd like to, transition from the user fee to a user fee and a base fee, because what we have is we have fixed costs that you're gonna have to pay. It's our debt service, it's the utilities, basic utilities for our facilities, your electrical cost. So those fixed fees that we're incurring, we'd like to capture that in a base fee and then eventually transition away from the minimum bill. So that's what we're really trying to do, and this is the start of that transition. So we have our financial analyst, Michael here, who's run all these numbers, and you'll see it's very detailed as far as our analysis. But yes, it is a base fee that customers would pay regardless of whether they use 1 gallon of water or 50,000 gallons of
Or
water.
0 gallons of water.
Yes, or zero.
Everything else, though, is measured on gallons of water you use, and since you don't measure what people are putting into our sewer system, it's all measured by the amount of water that they use.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and so the amount of the rate is per gallon of water, is that right?
The amount of rate is per 1,000 gallons of water.
Or per 1,000
So
gallons of water.
You see the user rate, where we're talking, in 2023, right now, we're at $3.70, or $4.70.
And that's per,
1,000
every 1,000 gallons of water you use, you get charged that amount of money?
That's correct. yes.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, if it was a gallon for that, that would be awfully high, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's more than a bottle of water, yes. So when we look at other communities, surrounding communities, what we're showing here is we're showing where we currently fall, and this is for the water survey. This is a water rate survey of surrounding communities. We're actually, right now, we're like the third least costly utility in the surrounding area here. Claremont County and the city of Middletown are the only communities who offer a service less expensive than us. So these rates are based off of, the survey is based off of a survey that's done by the city of Piqua, and it's based off of quarterly costs. So what you see here is a 3-month bill. If somebody was to be billed at our rates for 3 months, this is what you see here. So
Well, where would we be at if you have your new rate structure?
the new rate is in orange here, so,
The orange?
yes, so
Okay,
you
the-
see.
The current rate is yellow and the new rate is orange?
Is orange. So if nobody else next year raises their rates at all, we would potentially drop down a score there, 1 score or so. That's if nobody else raises their rates, which I find difficult to believe that nobody in the surrounding area is going to raise their rates based off the economic conditions that's going on now.
So we're still gonna be at the low end of all the people you've listed.
Right.
And I take it have you listed everybody that's in Warren County?
Pretty much. I mean, we have Butler County, well, we tried to focus on the surrounding communities, not just Warren County, but also Dayton,
No, I noticed
Cincinnati
that,
Water,
but
Western Water. There's Springboro in here, there's Hamilton,
I
there's
see
Middletown.
Mason's in there.
Franklin
Mason's
Lebanon.
in there.
It looks like anybody that
Western.
provides water services in here.
Western Water.
That's
Yes.
my only
It's
question.
pretty
is
exhaustive.
everybody that is in Warren County is there?
It's in here. So we are truly one of
So
the
it
least
still,
expensive.
it appears to me, if that's the case, we are still gonna be, unless you count some parts of Middletown that are in Warren County.
We would go from
We'd still be the
third.
lowest in the county.
We would go from third to fourth lowest.
Yeah, but we'd still be low, with everybody, no,
We'd still be lowest in the county.
that's my point.
Well, Middletown, there's a small portion of
That's what I
Middletown
said.
in
Right,
the county.
Right.
So, keep in mind, this rate, we changed our quality service 2 years ago. So this rate, keep in mind that we
had the water softening in
we
there.
implemented softening
right.
at the cost of, I don't know, it was probably $26, $28 million.
Between the two systems is about 35 million.
So we implemented $35 million worth of softening improvements, and we're still like the third least expensive in the surrounding area. So,
And this is just the rate, it's not the base rate.
No, this is,
So it's including
This-
the
what
base
we're showing-
cost that you're,
yes. What we're showing in the yellow is, the new rate with the base fee and
Okay.
the increase. So that's what you see in the orange.
Okay.
So we go from our current rate structure, which is yellow, into the orange. Okay.
Now, is there a reason why you just don't make an incremental increase in the rate structure itself to accommodate that base amount you're talking about? Is that just too complicated to make a fraction like that?
I mean, there's a couple reasons why, but I think the main reason why we want to move to this is we want to change our rate structure.
Yeah, similar to like electric utilities, for example, where there's a distribution cost, there's a fixed cost associated with the piping to a individual resident. Whether or not you use water or not, there are fixed costs that are related to that. Setting up billing are related to that.
Our customers don't care for our minimum bill right now, because right
Yeah.
now we charge a minimum bill of, it's 6,000 gallons for every 2 months.
so now they're gonna get charged based on actual usage as opposed to a minimum bill, but they're going to see what the fixed costs, or in the electric utility world, a distribution cost is just to serve that individual residence or business or what have you.
Here
I wanted to jump off of that. This alludes to kind of where our system is going. So as you see with a lot of systems, as they age, they change, they kind of transition how they have to pay for things. So we used to be a young system, so a lot of our costs were captured, we were able to capture them through tap fees. As the community grows and starts to become a little more built out, and we're starting to see tap fees kind of trail off, you're seeing our model and how we fund things transition more towards being paid by the ratepayers. So that's why you're starting to see this transition to the increases we're looking at, as well as the base fee.
All right,
Michael, did you want to mention more why we're transitioning, or?
Well, I wanted to mention, like, the reason we do the fixed fee instead of putting it into the variable rate that's based on volume is that fixed fee is staying the same amount for each of those years. Whereas if we put it into the rate, that's gonna compound each of those years, it's gonna raise that up. So we're trying to be competitive with our rates, and that fixed fee will help do that.
okay, that's fine. And by the way, how do we handle outside water usage, which are sewer charges? So in other words, I know if somebody uses water outside, that doesn't go into our
To
our
fill a
wastewater
pool or-
treatment.
Right. So we handle it several different ways. I mean, if somebody's filling a swimming pool, they can call us up and we'll give them a credit. We'll reduce their sewer fee, because that's not, we're not returning that back to the sewer. But if you have an irrigation system, if you have a sprinkler system in your yard, then we have two ways to handle that. Those customers can either elect to install a second meter, which is an irrigation meter, and that service.
So some sort of a deduct meter?
That service would have no sewer to it. So they would be billed for their domestic, which is water and sewer, then they would be billed for just their water usage for the irrigation system. There'd be no sewer fee attached to that. So that's one way we handle it. If customers don't want to take the cost of installing a second meter, then our billing system automatically gives customers a reduction in their sewer bill during the summer. So our billing system looks at their water usage during the winter and says, this is what you typically use.
So you do a winter averaging method?
We do that.
So tell me how your winter averaging method works. So do you take like your 3 winter months, and then you average that, and then you take the period of time from like May to October and you apply that rate? Is
So
that what you
so
do?
what we do is we take the usage during your winter, and then
What months is considered winter?
it's probably, I think, November through February is probably
Okay.
the months that,
Okay.
that's truly your low usage, where you're not using water
That makes sense.
outside.
And then
So
you average it?
Our billing system averages those usages probably from November to February. And then it takes a factor and adds it to it, because we know that during the summer, customers are using more water. So there is a peaking factor that goes on.
So you
from
don't
average usage.
you don't actually make that be the amount, you actually add something to it because you think their water usage is heavier
We know,
inside.
it's not, we think.
We know it, okay.
We've run the numbers,
All
And
right.
we know from looking at a sample of our customers and what they use, we know that their usage is about 175% higher during the summer than it is in the winter. So then our program caps that, and then anything above 175 gets knocked off their bills.
Okay, are you talking about 100, and the percentages is the cap?
Yes, percent.
Okay, all right, that sounds like a complicated thing, but that's what you.
But it
you're doing.
works, I mean, and it's backed up by financial analysis, it's backed up by, a sample of customers, and so we
Okay.
know that that's inaccurate.
So what months do you consider to be the summer usage, or the period where you apply this rate?
Do you remember what the summer monthage is? Probably June through October, I think, is it?
It doesn't start in May?
I don't know, I'd have to look, but it's typically probably from June to
Okay.
October.
All right, thank you.
So we talked about the water rates. On the sewer rates, it's very similar. You can stay up here. On the sewer rates, it's very similar. Right now, we're the fourth least expensive sewer provider in the surrounding area. If we go with these rate increases that we're asking, we potentially could drop down one level if no other,
And Chris,
entity.
you mentioned the minimum billing that, a lot of your customers, don't like because they use less than that. So then presumably there'll be some customers who see lower bills.
Well, we're still gonna keep the minimum bill, and then I think that's something in our next phase, we're looking to transition out of.
In our next phase, I would like to concentrate more on doing a fixed fee for our fixed expenses, and then, expenses based on volume, we would do at a variable rate, and we may do different tiers, residential and commercial, depending on that.
So,
Right,
would it-
Because it helps, better understand, because, we still have probably, 60%, fixed expenses. So, we want to be able to cover those with the fixed fee, because, if we don't have any volume, if water stopped, we still have that fixed percentage, and we want to cover those in a fixed fee.
so would those customers expect a lower bill or a higher bill, or make no difference?
I think what you'll see is you'll see an increase in the customer bills. I don't think, with the rate structure we're asking for, I don't think we'll have customers that'll receive a lower bill based off this rate structure. Yes, and we have
So
examples here.
what does this
of the-
have to do,
Because we're gonna maintain our minimum bill for this period, for this billing period, for this session of rate increases we're asking for. We'd like to continue having those minimum bills, but add the flat fee. And this structure that we're asking for is very similar to the structure that we had 2 years ago, prior to when the board,
Yeah.
eliminated that flat fee. So it's very
With
similar
one
rate
time-
structure.
with
So
one
you
time
actually see the
inflations.
rates are probably pretty similar to the rates that we had 2 years ago, back in 2021, prior to, because we actually saw, our customers actually saw a rate decrease last year.
Well, when people see, when you implement the new structure, how will people notice this in their bill? Will it be a noticeable increase, or are we gonna get calls from people that are really surprised?
So this is where the customers will see on our bills, okay? So our minimum bill water customers will see in 2024, they'll see 35.32, a bill of 35.32 for water. And then if they have sewer, they'll see a minimum bill of 33.48. So when you look at it, if you're a water customer and all you get is water from Warren County, you're gonna see, you're gonna essentially pay, 60 cents a day for water,
60 cents total, or 60 cents in addition to what they're doing now?
No, 60 cents total a day. So if you take the minimum bill, 35.32, and divide it by the 60 billing days, and 60 days in the billing cycle, you come up with 60 cents a day.
All right, but here's my question. My real question is, if you take our average customer, what are they paying now on that bi-monthly basis? And under the new structure, what would they be paying? So I was looking at the total cost of the average person. I want to see the difference.
I don't know what the average bill is. Do you have this?
So if you take this, the average minimum, we have a lot of minimum bill customers. I don't know if that's the average customer, but if you just take the minimum bill here, what they're paying now for water, the top blue line, is $28.20. What it will go to is $35.32. And then for sewer, it's gonna go from $28.02 to up there is $33.48. So that's what these customers, there's a lot of minimum bill customers.
So
I
they're
don't know
gonna
if
see
it's
about,
necessarily average,
on a
but-
bi-monthly basis.
67% of our customers have more than a minimum bill.
So about a third of your customers will receive,
But I think I just heard that the bill of people that right now is at this minimum level is gonna go up on a bi-monthly basis by about $20, something like that.
No, it'll go up, if just water, so if you're just looking at water, it's going from $28.20 to $35.32, so $7
Okay?
every 2 months.
And then if you got sewer added to that,
Correct, 14, so about 14, so you're right, 7 and 7, it's 28.02 to 33, so actually only $5 there. So about $12 if you get both.
this is the minimum bill right now. So in 2023, you have a minimum water bill of 28.20 and a minimum sewer bill of 28.02. So minimum bill is 56.22. And then, yes, they're gonna see an increase to 68.50. Or 68.80.
So $12 every 2 months.
So why aren't we getting rid of the minimum bill now?
So there's, you can, elect a different rate structure where you go with, instead of a minimum bill, you go with a higher user rate, but that gets compounded every year.
No,
So-
what I'm saying is what I thought I heard was that's your next piece of this, moving to this rate structure, is to eliminate this
Minimum bill.
altogether and go to a base rate plus usage.
Yes, and that's what I'm in the process of working on. It's gonna take some time to get all the data together and, things like that to figure the best,
We want to
how
take
we
a
wanna do.
stepped process to it, because we don't want to drastically change our rate structure all of a sudden. I mean, we want to try to transition into this, and I think this, what we're recommending here allows that transition.
And one thing with our new billing software that we're gonna get, I'll be able to track demographics that are gonna help with this a lot more than what kind of software we have right now.
so how do you explain, when you implement this, how do you communicate with our service provider, the people that are receiving our services?
We have a variety of ways that we reach out to our customers. It's through social media, it's through, notifications in our bills. So it's email services, we'll email our customers and notify them of the rate increases. That's typically what we do.
But do you explain the rate increases and why you're doing
Yeah,
it?
yeah, we will. Oh, absolutely. Because, that's our next step on explaining why we're going to these rate structures.
And do you do that in advance of doing it?
Yes, we will. So I know these are, heavy asks as far as the rate goes, but there's a reason why we're doing that. And what we're showing here is we're showing our revenue versus our expenses since 2013. And there's several things we want to point out here. Right now is the most challenging time we've ever had for our department financially. And when you look at where we're at right now, we're projecting a deficit of $850,000 on our sewer, or our water fund this year. This means that we're going to spend $850,000 more than what we take in from our user fees. What that means is right now, we're projecting to be upside down this year with our finances.
This is in 2023?
This is 2023, because of the increases in everything related to service. It's from chemicals to utilities. Everything that we purchase has increased significantly, and so that's primarily why we're looking at this rate increase, because we cannot continue to operate that way.
Is the blue your revenue and the red your expenditures?
Blue is, yes, that is correct. The blue is the revenue. So you'll see back in 2016, the county changed our rate structure. The commissioners agreed, and Commissioner Grossman, you'll probably remember this, where, we came before the board and asked that there be a $7.50 flat fee be added onto the bills in 2016, with the idea that we would raise money to build these softening facilities. And what you see in 2016, 2017, 2018, you see a big margin between what we took in and what we spent. And that was with the whole concept that we would take that money that you see, the margin there, and we would plow that into our softening facilities to allow us to raise money so that we could take less of a debt service on that. And it worked. I mean, when you look at that, when you look at the whole area between the two, you're looking at $20 million, which we were able to raise and then plow into our softening facilities.
All right, so how much money do you have in your fund for paying for the deficit you project for this year?
So we have coverage. We have coverage to pay for. We have
But
sufficient.
I'm asking you how much you have.
But we have sufficient funds. Michael has that. I think we're like $24 million in surplus funds right now. Tell me if
Okay,
I'm wrong.
so
It's
you've got
around
plenty
that
of
area.
funds to pay for the
So right now, at the
$850,000.
end of the year, our surplus funds is at 21 million. We keep, we have 30% of operating expenses that we keep as a minimum fund plus 150% of our debt payment. That comes out to about 6 million that we have to have minimum. So at the end of the year in 2023, we project a total cash balance of 27 million, but cash reserve that we can put towards capital projects is at 21 million. Now, if we take away, at the end of the year, we'll have about 4.2 million encumbered in projects already. We're down at about 17, so that's where we are there.
So if once you institute, what you're telling me is that right now, we have plenty of money in our funds to cover the deficit this year.
We
This,
do.
in this
We do.
deficit too, now, when we're talking about revenue, this is our service charge revenue. The service charge revenue based off
That's-
rates.
That's the blues.
That should always cover our operating and maintenance plus debt. So that's what we're talking about with deficit with revenue, is service charge revenue.
Okay, so I understand,
This
but
is outside of tap fees.
I get you. So now, on a going forward basis, so you want your general operating costs to be covered by your general revenue from your rates?
Yes.
Actually, we would like to see it exceed. We want to see our revenue exceed.
Oh, I agree. I get that.
This gets back to what Mr. Weinich was talking about, that our system is aging. So, and you see it. I mean, when we came here last time, we talked about how we have a large number of main breaks occurring, and that a large portion of our collection.
And a
or
big list
distribution
of capital projects on the books for which there aren't revenues to
Yeah,
cover
and
it.
so-
I get it.
And so some of that margin should cover, reinvestment back into your system. So we would like to see, $1 million or $1.5 million to $2 million in excess. But what you're seeing, is we're not there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you're asking for. What I would like to know, though, so as a first step, it seems completely reasonable that we have to have our revenue meet our operating expense. So I'd like to know what that rate adjustment would need to be to have that at even. So what we take in goes back out. In terms of what would that rate increase be? The second thing is then if we're going to approve something beyond that for capital, which I understand you were here and you went through all the list of capital projects that we know that are on our books for which we don't have the reserves to cover, and that you're telling us because of this delta here, some of those reserves are gonna pay for this delta in the short term, is, because the $7.50 that we levied was for a specific purpose. I mean, we knew
Right.
that we
We
were
were
gonna
trying to
build
raise
this stuff, we were
funds.
trying to raise funds. So I guess what I would say is, just from a general principle, I don't have any problem with needing to raise capital, but I'd like to define, what is it that we're gonna commit to do with this increase to be able to do that.
Now, I wanted to talk about, because you asked about break even first. Our break even rate would be 526 per kcal, where we're asking for 505.
Let's go through the presentation, because I think what you're asking, you'll get answers in the presentation here. Because when you say you want to see what it would take to break even, you'll see that in the graphs that we have here. Because you'll see our rates that we're recommending, and you'll see what we're projecting, and you'll see that we're pretty much breaking even. We're breaking even with these rates that we're asking you to adopt. We're not asking for rates that give us, that margin that we're looking for.
Yeah, but you're actually asking us for two different things. You're asking us to consider a rate increase, which seems like we have to do a rate increase because we can't offer service if we are losing money on that service. We have to at least be able to cover our costs. But you're also asking us to take a step towards a different kind of rate structure. And with the expectation that you're gonna be back here at some point, asking us to then do a next step. And what I'm trying to get my arms around is, why do I want to do a halfway different, halfway in to a new rate structure, when you're gonna come back here and ask us to then add on top
Well,
of
I'm
it?
The ask would not be for 3 years, 4 years. So that's the next time. When I'm saying we want to transition to a different rate structure, I'm talking about in the distant future here. I'm talking about 3 or 4 years from now. So when our the recommended rates expire here, the next time we come to the board, which would be 3 years from now, hopefully, if, that's when we would take maybe the final step to a different rate structure. So what the rate structure we're asking right now is very similar to the rate structure we've had in the past. It's not significantly different. When we talk about that flat fee on, that we're asking, we had that on the water side, but we also had that on the sewer side. When you look back, it was probably 10 years ago. We had a $2.50 flat fee on the sewer side back 10 years ago. And so it's not that much different than what we've had in the past, but we don't want to go totally different. I mean, we don't want to totally change our structure. We want to slowly transition to that. So we're not asking for that next step, a year from now. We're thinking about that 3 years from now.
Yeah, I still need to analyze how that'll work and see, if I think that's the best, thing for our department and our customers, and I'd bring it in front of you to, see how you'd feel about it. But some other entities use that rate structure. The EPA or whatever, they have different, reasons for doing certain structures depending on, the type of, county government, how the infrastructure works, and that's something I'm studying right now.
So when we utilize some of our ARPA dollars to pay down the debt on the water softening, is that the impetus for getting rid of the $7.50?
I think that was, yes, the use of the ARPA dollars allowed us to receive the funds up front instead of having it extended over.
So that to me was a relevant part of this conversation that would have been helpful to know at the front end. So we had made the decision, Tom, to eliminate that fee and paid upfront with ARPA dollars. And so we wanted those rates to go down, that fee to go down for customers, but we did that artificially through these one-time resources.
And you'll see why these rates, what it is that's driving these rates. Because there are significant reasons why. We've never seen economic times like we're in now, where the cost of everything goes up, not by 3 or 5, or not even by consumer price index. We're looking at items that are going at a significantly higher price, percentage-wise, than consumer price index, and we'll get into that in a second.
So before, I understand you want to get to your PowerPoint, and I'll let you do that, but I want to get back to the $7.50, because I think this is germane to what you're trying to argue.
is that we eliminated the $7.50 fee in exchange for the one-time ARPA dollars. And now you're asking for us to restore that fee, but less. So it's actually less of a base rate fee than they were paying. So while we are returning to a base rate fee, it's not at $7.50. That was a one-time, if you will, a one-time reduction over a 2-year period of time because of these one-time dollars, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that fee, just like we gave a sales tax holiday, the expenses still were there. We just were paying them one time. So now as customers are paying their full tax bill, that wasn't a rate increase. It was really just they are paying now what they were supposed to be paying, but because of our sales tax holiday, or I'm sorry, our property tax holiday, there was that. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, and I think customers would understand that we did this reduction. We wanted all customers to benefit from it, and now we have to go back in part, not totally, but in part, to restore a base rate and an adjustment to,
I mean, you see the margin, the difference, you know, we have to make that up somehow, whether that's in a base rate or whether that's in a user rate increase, the revenue has to come in.
yeah, I think that makes total sense, but what I think both the Commissioner Grossman and I heard was there's this new thing that's coming back on the bill, and that it feels high, but in reality, it's actually, in terms of this base rate, is actually less. And then there's an adjustment for the usage that of course is increasing as the cost of everything is increasing. So I just look at this completely different and say, okay, we're returning to our ARPA dollar one-time experience that we wanted customers to be able to feel the benefit of that. So it's like we're investing in our plant. We want customers to benefit from that too. We did that. Now we've got to make some sense of this again because we're upside down here and we don't want to get out of whack. So we're partially restoring that base rate. And then because our revenues don't meet our expenses on the operations side, we're having to increase the rate. Yeah.
And so, not only does, you know, is our water side affected, but our sewer side is also affected. We're looking at a projected deficit of $1.1 million on the sewer side, so very similar financial conditions on the sewer side. So, what is it that's driving these increases? What you see here is you see a chart of some of our more significant, you know, expenses. You'll see that, you know, our utilities have increased. Back in 2022, we were probably spending somewhere around $700,000 in electric and utility service to our, you know, to run our treatment plants. Now we're looking at double that amount. We're looking at this year, we will spend probably, you know, $1.4 million in utilities.
And who's our utility provider?
We have a number, I mean, it's.
Duke, and we have AES and Vectren.
So it's split up between the north and south, and we do purchase bulk, bulk electric service.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and actually, Chris, you've led this up, where, you know, it was probably, when we started this, 10 years ago, I think we went out and started bidding this, you know, electric service.
And now the market's high.
Yes, but, you know, and we have contracts, and we hired a consultant to help us navigate that whole electric side. But that doesn't mean your whole bill is locked in. You still have cost increases for distribution.
Yeah,
is
like
what
I
you're
understand,
buying us.
yes, I
So-
chair the utilities committee. I know how those rates
Those work.
work.
So-
What I'm wondering is if on the generation side, if there's anything else that we can do, or are you looking
We're
into?
going out and bidding again.
Our contract ends in April, so you will be seeing an RFQ coming forward to hire a consultant again to assist us, because it is above us a little bit.
Yeah.
This stuff is very complicated. There's several different ways to obtain that, through, they have blocks now, different things, and so yes, we are pursuing.
That's all I wanted to know, is to make sure we're taking advantage of the tools that are afforded to us and to be able to competitively bid tranches of generation. Okay,
And just so you, in fact, it's not just us, so we do partner with the parks.
so you're gonna do some aggregation
We
here.
work in the engineer's office, and we do work with Trevor on any electric that is outside of Lebanon.
Cause if this is an issue that the sewer department is experiencing, my guess is it's an
Everybody's
issue that everybody's experiencing. And to the extent that we can aggregate that,
So our chemical cost, you'll see in the graph here, our chemical cost has increased significantly. I mean, this is probably one of the largest increases we've seen, not just because of the rates of chemicals, the fee, but also because our usage has gone up. So when we adopted these softening facilities, we're not necessarily, using a predominance amount of chemical, but our chemical use has gone up because of these softening facilities. So we've gone from probably spending, back in 2020, we were probably spending somewhere around $70,000 a year in chemicals. Now we're at like, probably close to $800,000. So that's due to rate increases on chemicals, but also our usage has gone up. Our debt service has gone up, because we did take a loan. Was it a $13 million loan? I think it was
It's
through
14 and a half.
through DEFA, the state funding mechanism. So, our debt was probably, I think, $300,000, a couple years ago. Now it's going up to
1.14.
1.14 million. So we made that partial payment last year in 2023, and that debt fully comes on in 2024. So we'll see another increase in debt service. So, when you look at it, we have a breakout of some of the significant increases. The chart here, and this was not in your packet, but this is something Michael put together just to give you an idea across the board of everything that's increased and the percentage that it increases by. Everything from meters to, couplings that we use. Anything steel related has gone up significantly. If you want to buy a Ford pickup truck, Ford 350 service pickup truck, it increased by 81% over the last 3 years. It went from $30,000 to $54,000. The biggest chemical we buy is sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach. You can go to Walmart and buy a bottle of bleach. That bleach that we use has gone up 172%
Yeah.
in the last 3 years. So,
it is at Walmart too.
yes.
I mean,
Okay.
last time I went in
I
to
mean,
buy a
it's-
gallon of bleach, I was like, I was paying like $4 or $5 for a gallon of bleach. I was like, this is crazy.
And when I bought it last time,
It's a buck.
It was like a
Buck
buck. yeah.
29 or something, yeah.
So, all these things, I don't think there's a single item out there that hasn't gone up that we use. Everything has gone up. There's nothing that has gone down in price or stayed the same.
Yeah, but so, in totality, what has been your increase cost on an annual basis, total amount?
About 12 to 15% inflation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 12 to 15%, so.
All right, and the new rate structure and new fees are gonna more than cover that and create a surplus again, is that right?
They will cover it if we don't continue seeing these crazy increases. Michael's projections are based off of the idea that, inflation is gonna come back down, and we're gonna be back down to somewhere between 3% and 4% annually on inflation. If it continues up at like 7, 8% or 14%, we're not gonna be able, our rates are not gonna be able to sustain that, all right? So there's some assumptions in Michael's business model here that says that we're going to come back down to normal inflation.
So now, when we add on new customers, does that, does that help us or does that hurt us in terms of our provision of services, the cost of provision of services and revenue? Obviously, if we add a new customer, we get more revenue.
Right.
But there's also an incremental cost of providing the service too.
Overall, the pricing that we're showing you helps us break even. So it does, new customers, operational wise, doesn't help us or hurt us, but it does help us on the capital side, because they're paying tap fees and connection fees.
Okay.
And that money that we receive from those new customers are poured back into our treatment plants. And that's where, at the very end of this presentation, you'll see a slide where we're recommending some adjustments to those tap fees and connection.
Well, so because in projecting into the future, when you said, we've got more like an aging system, was your comment. But I see this county as continuing to grow in population and continuing to have new housing, new residents.
It does, yes.
So I don't, so why is it, so when you say it's an aging system, in light of the fact that we are obviously expanding in terms of our population, including in areas that we cover, why is that aging? Is that because
But
of you?
it's, when you overall look at our system compared to other communities like Cincinnati and Dayton, those are significantly older systems. Our infrastructure dates back to the 1960s. And in the 1960s, the materials of construction are different than what we're using now. So we saw, in the 60s, we saw a lot of cast iron pipe. We saw a lot of small diameter galvanized pipe, especially in places like Loveland Park. In those places, we're seeing a significant increase in main breaks. So that's where, we're saying overall, we're still, yes, overall, generically, we're a young system, but there's portions of our distribution system that are older, and that's where we're seeing a lot of.
Okay, so that's really what you're saying is that when we put in some of these systems back in the 60s, we used it with technology that was the state of the art back then, but those pipes are failing now.
Those pipes are failing, and that's
Okay.
where we see a lot of our guys going back to the same communities, repairing, mains that are breaking, every 4 or 5 months, and our customers are getting tired of that.
And what are we using today that changes that? Are we using different materials in our pipes? What are
Yes,
we
we
doing?
are. I mean, we're using, it transitioned out, cast iron pipe transitioned out in the 1970s, and it transitioned to ductile iron pipe, which is a better pipe. But we also have other pipe materials that, we're using also. In some places, we're using PVC or high-density polyethylene pipe, where the soils are corrosive. And so that pipe, stands up better in corrosive soil. So we're using a variety of different materials. So when you look at our challenges that face us in the future here, the purchase of water from a third-party entity is still our biggest financial burden. So we still continue to spend, a third of our operating cost on the purchase of bulk water from Cincinnati Water Works. So every year, our budget right now in 2023 is $15.6 million. A third of that amount is being spent to purchase Cincinnati Water for our sociable customer area. And that's where, we're trying to get away from that. So that's where we're taking those steps to become self-sufficient, independent, where we want to take back the sociable area. And this is, the graph that you see here is the difference between what we buy water at and what we sell it to our customers. You'll see, like, in 2023, this year, we're purchasing water at $5.98 a thousand gallons. That's what we're purchasing from Cincinnati Water Works. And then we're turning around and selling to our customers at a rate of $4.70. So we lose over $1 every 1,000 gallons that we resell to our customers.
Yeah.
That's because we have that flat rate structure.
You know how I feel about that.
And that's where
I talk about this every time this gets put in front of me. It drives me crazy.
It drives, and that's where, hopefully at the end of 2025, that'll change. And you'll see that here when we get to our projections of our revenue and expenses. So again, Michael, this year, it will pay $1 million more to Cincinnati Water.
This year we'll be at close to 5 million or 5.1 on Cincinnati Purchase Water. There's been an increase this year with water use, and that rate was a 5.5% increase. And they're gonna have 5.5% increases the next 2 years as well. So that number is growing significantly more than the 4% over the past couple years that we've averaged.
So where do these new rates bring us? And this, Commissioner Jones, gets back to your question of, where are we gonna be at in the near future with these rates? What we're showing is we're showing our projected revenue and our projected expenses over the next 3 years. And you'll see in 2024, 2025, our margin, there's probably a $200,000 margin where we're expecting to potentially take in $200,000 more than we're gonna spend in 2024 and 2025. But our contract with Cincinnati Waterworks ends at the end of 2025. And that's where you see that big chunk of money that we're paying Cincinnati Waterworks comes off. And that's where you see that bounce, where, at that year, if things work out right, we'll be, $4 million ahead.
Now, we'll take on additional expenses in chemicals and utilities and things like that once we take over Social Bill customers. But, we
But
do
that's in-
net
that's in your-
significantly.
That's in your projections.
Yes, that's in the
What you're saying
projections.
2026
Yes.
is your estimated expense
Yes.
when you crank our treatment plant harder.
Exactly.
So-
So that is a big thing that we're counting on for 2026 is that reduction. If not, that's $5.5, $6 million added to 2026 in that rate. If, depending, we may have to ask for funding, or there may be something we need to do if that's not.
So we're not asking
Okay.
for rates that give us the margins we're looking for. We're asking for rates over 2024 and 2025 that help us break even.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's the same when you look at,
So in the last 2 minutes here, I know you'll be coming back again before we actually vote on this, because we're not taking action today. What do you want, what is the last, what's the bottom line here you want us to know?
let me cover, 2 more slides.
You have
here.
2 minutes.
Okay, so here are some of the fees that we charge. A lot of what we're seeing now, like the cost of paying for meters and what we charge our customers, there's a difference. Our cost for service, our tap fees, we're asking for an increase in tap fees. Where, and this is gonna affect the building community. You're gonna hear feedback from the Builders Association.
And have you shared this with them?
At this point, we have not. So we're looking at it, and we have not increased tap-in fees or connection fees for new customers.
Okay, so they're here
probably
now.
in 20 years.
So now they're on notice, because they're here.
It's probably
So they-
probably been at least 15 years. I don't recall them being increased since I've been here. So we've had the same fees. So we're asking for those fees to increase along with some of our normal operating fees to increase. And finally, what we're proposing is we're asking the board to schedule a public hearing to talk about this in public session in order for us to adopt these rates. We would really like to see these rates go into effect by January next year. And to do that, we're asking the board consider holding a public hearing.
Okay, so, what I'd like for you to do is to reach out to Commissioner Young, who couldn't be here this morning, to get onto his schedule so you can talk to him, walk through the slide deck with him, and if Commissioner Grossman and I have any other questions around this, we'll reach out to you directly for some clarification. Tom, do you have anything you wanna add?
Nope,
Great.
it's been very informative, I appreciate it.
I-
And I appreciate all the efforts you've done over the years to keep our rate structure very competitive, in fact, lower than practically everybody else. People don't really realize that, when they pay their bills, they don't make these comparisons. So when we do start raising, I want you to inform people the reason, and maybe give an idea of the comparison too.
And can I
Yeah.
say just something real quick? When we're looking at like a monthly comparison to other entities, we're coming in $15 to $30 cheaper per bill.
Yeah.
You know, so we are very competitive with that.
Well, and I hear, Chris, that the likelihood of any of those water or sewer entities being able, I mean, they're experiencing the same increase in costs that you all are experiencing. It would be really helpful to know what their intention is and what they're looking at, to the extent that we are able to know that, because I'm sure they're all.
Because most of them have increased the past 2
I'm
years.
trying to go online and search for rate increases for 2024 and 2025. I'm trying to, where, I know other entities have to be increasing their rates because nobody can sustain operating this way.
Yeah.
And as far as I haven't seen anybody else jumping on that, but I know it'll happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suspect that those political subdivisions are having the same conversations that you're having right now with us, so perhaps their administrators will have some indication around it.
Yeah, and a lot of them did that in 2022 after the pandemic. That's where a lot of their major increases
But a
were.
lot of them also had one-time ARPA dollars that they were utilizing with their water and sewer departments as well, so. Okay, thank you very much.
So is the direction after they speak to Commissioner Young to get on the agenda to set a public hearing, or how would you like that handled?
Would you like us to?
I'm not prepared to set a public hearing at this moment. I
Okay.
don't know if Tom
That's fine.
is. But I hear you, and I think as soon as you talk to Commissioner Young, we have a chance to kind of delve into this and ask you some questions, then we can do that in short order.
So would you like him to get back on the agenda maybe early November, to ask additional questions, or exactly how would you like to handle that?
I don't,
You want the rates to go up in 2024, right?
Yeah,
So we need to make a decision prior to what date?
Well, for that to go into effect, we have to have public hearing.
How
in
soon?
Probably November, because the public hearing, Mr. McGarry, is there a time frame in which the public hearing would have to go before we could implement those rate increases?
Yeah, I mean,
Is it
I
60
just-
days?
I'm not prepared to set a public hearing, but we may be prepared to set a public hearing next week. I don't know that requires you to come back to another work session in order to do that. We could just set a public hearing. But I think that I just need you to talk to Commissioner Young, and then I wanna look through here, and I wanna reach back out to you if I have any other questions, and then we can just set a public hearing. Unless Commissioner Young has an interest in you coming for a work session after you all speak. That's what I'm trying to gauge. So if he wants you to come back in for a work session before a public hearing, I want to be able to meet that. But if he is satisfied with your meeting and that we're just setting the public hearing to then hear from the public and deliberate, I'm fine with that too.
Okay, and I think we should accommodate that, and my only question is there a timing issue, Bruce, as to when the latest period we have to meet? That's all, for a public hearing.
You know, the rates, don't have to go into effect January 1st.
Right.
I mean, it'd be nice, but.
Okay, well, then we have some flexibility.
There's no.
And you can
statutory requirement.
raise rates mid-year. You don't have to do it on an annual basis.
Yeah, we can, but.
Okay, all right, good enough. That gives us the flexibility we need.
Yeah, I understand. We're not trying to drag our feet here, but I don't know that we need to have another work session in order to set a public hearing, but I wanna be able to have you talk to Dave and figure out if he wants to do that.
I appreciate your time today, because I know this topic is difficult. I mean, there's a lot of numbers and graphs and financial figures, and I appreciate all your insightful questions, so.
Well, it's very helpful. All the
Yeah.
information you give us is helpful. It's important. This is an important topic.
Yep.
I'm sure that this topic didn't have anything to do with why David isn't here. But we always look forward to seeing you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thanks. Okay, we have a public hearing
for the continuation to consider text amendments to the requirements and standards for the design and construction of streets and roadway facilities in Warren County. And is the engineer, yes, the engineers are right in front of my face. Good morning. Thank you for being back here today.
Good morning. Thank you for your time.
Right, so this is coming back to where you guys were looking at what they were doing, what, in Kenton County, and you're proposing new standards and that some other counties are using. And the builders came in last time and they seemed
And
to
we
favor.
asked them to
the-
go back
exactly,
and
work
kind
with
of
each
work
other to
on
come
a
up with something.
compromise.
Exactly, so I guess my question is, what happened in the meantime? Do you have a compromise?
Partially. We, so the development group suggested several changes, and we were able to agree with a couple of those. One of those changes that they asked for was to give them, if they were to have a need to stabilize the subgrade, that we be able to work out a formula for credit, giving them some credit for the strength gained by adding chemicals to the subgrade. And there is some structural gain there. So we were able to work through that, again, using the standard pavement design criteria, and we've worked out a credit. They also asked us to consider an alternate approach to taking pavement cores for determining the pavement section depth to verify that sufficient depth was constructed. And for curb and gutter streets, we were able to work out an alternative approach there. That approach is using a string line and logging the depth before you put the asphalt and granular material down. The uncurbed sections, we're not able to do that, so we would still need to core there. So those two items, we were able to work with them. The other two was a request to raise our base pavement section. Right now, we have, our base pavement section covers 0 to 50 lots. Once we're over 50 lots, and we go to the next step, adding an inch of asphalt and an inch of granular. And we've discussed that item, and we really feel strongly that 50 lots is a good place to be.
Where do they want it to be?
100.
100.
100, yes. And then the other item was to discard the 2/3 lot development requirement before entering into the maintenance period. So this is an item that we've received a lot of feedback from the townships, and traditionally going back before 2008, we had an 80% rule that we would not accept the subdivision section for public maintenance until 80% of the lots were developed. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, of course, is, while construction is going on, you have that ability to, or occurrences of pavement failures or damage to pavement. You might see dumpsters out in the pavement area, construction vehicles. It's just really not ready yet for the townships to get back in and maintain those streets. So, at least have the better part of the construction complete. And so 80% was the number that we had used for probably decades. We did notice that, Delaware County, for instance, that's the threshold they use today. So what we proposed with our original submittal was 67% lots developed, and then once they hit that threshold, we would start the 2-year maintenance, and that's what we'd like to stick with. We also received a letter from the Turtle Creek Township trustees basically outlining the same positions as we've taken.
Okay, so let me understand. So when the developer comes in, the first thing he's gonna be doing is putting in a street, he's gonna be putting in utilities, and he's already got it platted with all the different lots, and then he starts to build homes.
Yes.
And is the completion rate based upon occupancy, or is it based upon sale of the lot to somebody else, or is it based upon starting to build or finishing the building? How do you
Yeah,
measure that?
that's a good question. That would be based on the certificate of occupancy from the building inspection department.
Okay, so it's actually based upon the sale of the structure and the fact that it can be occupied?
Yes, sir, right.
Okay, and so it doesn't mean that it is occupied, just that it can
Right,
be?
can be.
And so your proposal is to make that occupancy rate what percentage of the subdivision in order to have it turned over to the jurisdiction to maintain?
The only threshold that we provide is 67% to start the 2-year maintenance window.
Okay, and what is the 2 years maintenance window?
That's the start of the maintenance period. It's 2 years duration. So they have to have 2 things completed. Of course, subdivision has to be substantially complete. They have to have the top course of asphalt on, and they have to have 2/3 of the homes developed, or two-thirds of the lots ready for occupancy. And then that starts the 2-year window. At the end of the 2 years, there is a final walkthrough, a punch list to make sure that all the items have been completed. And at that point, the township is out there with the walkthrough with the county and the developer. And at that point, assuming all the punch list items have been complete, is
You
when
accept then,
we take it to the commissioners for final acceptance. Yes.
okay, and once it's finally accepted, then we're responsible to maintain the road, not them?
Yes, sir. Right.
So that's what's going on?
Right.
And so the 67%, which is what you're recommending, previously, what were we at with that?
We were at 80% at the time of acceptance.
So it's.
So here, I mean, I don't know, it could be theoretically, it could be at the time of acceptance 67% if you've had no homes developed within, or lots developed within those 2 years, or.
You're
you know,
saying that they disagree with this?
Yes, because they don't have a definitive term for their bond. They don't know how long it's going to, in theory, they don't know how long it's going to take them to reach that 2/3
Where's the
threshold.
disagreement? Where are they disagreeing with you?
They would like what the developers would like is that they be able to construct the top course of asphalt right away if they choose, and then that starts the 2-year window. So essentially 0% instead of 67%.
And did they give you a reason for that?
Just the bonding, more certainty, cheaper bonds, more certainty on their costs. They enter into a new section, and that's an unknown for them.
Is what you're suggesting different from what we're doing today?
Yeah, we've been, when the recession hit in, 07, 08, to get these subdivisions turned over, we had to drop back from that 80%. And what we were finding was that the developers were in such, difficult positions financially. We needed that carrot to get them to construct the final course of asphalt and get these subdivisions completed. And no lots were being sold. We had to move away from that 80%
So what
threshold.
are we doing today?
Something closer to what the developers would like, and that is they can construct the top course of asphalt right away. That starts the 2-year window. So currently, we're at 0%.
So as I understand it, that there have been there was some movement on the variety of issues, but now it's coming down to those two
items.
primary issues, which is the lot count.
Right.
Going from 50 to 100, and the bonding provisions that you reference. So on the other matters, I assume that there is maybe perhaps reluctance agreement, but there is some agreement.
Yeah, what we all heard last meeting was, I believe everybody, including the development committee, strongly feel like, we need to make a change to our standards. No disagreement there. And it's really just down now to these 2 items.
Thank you. Okay, who else is here, wants to speak? I see Jonathan is here again. Jonathan, you want to come forward?
With me today is also Kenneth Hickey, our road and bridge supervisor, who was not sworn in previously, by the way, if he needs to be. Because he knows far more about the technical aspects of these things than I do, and I think he'll be able to address some of those things, at least from our perspective. And I'll give an introduction, then introduce him. He was the Public Works head over at Hamilton Township for many years, assistant administrator for the township out there, and has been our road and bridge supervisor for a couple of years now. So he has a lot of experience across the town, across the county, as far as roads and road conditions and what's actually happening, both specifically in Turtle Creek and elsewhere. We certainly want to make sure that we maintain the subgrade as proposed by the engineer's office. It's very important to us. We've worked with the engineer's office for a number of years on that very issue because we kept seeing the issue of pavement deterioration coming up. So that's a particularly important issue to Turtle Creek Township. Secondly, following on what Mr. Mick just said, if you go back to the housing crisis, it was, before the 2-year maintenance period started, it was 80%. And the housing crisis happened, and as Mr. Mick said, the builders were struggling. This is from my recollection of working with them, because they contact us, we reply back and work this back and forth, because it has an impact on us. So some realities of what go on. And we've sent our people out to speak with builders about these things. But for example, if a house is being constructed in July, then it can be 90 degrees outside. And the blacktop out there, of course, is soft then. And then you bring a very, very heavy concrete truck out and a row of heavy concrete trucks out. And they're sitting waiting to pour on that hot pavement. And those things are churning and churning and churning. And those wheels are just digging into that pavement, right? And you do that over and over and over and over and over again with all these houses as they're built. If you've accepted it ahead of time, then all of that comes down to us having to go through and pay the costs to repair those roads. Whereas if they have to maintain that while they're constructing, then the burden is on them, and they'll enforce different things. It doesn't cost them anything for us to pay for it. However, if they have to come back and make those repairs because of that 2/3, then they make different decisions out there. So it winds up being a cost savings for everyone, just because of more responsible decision making, just because the allocation of the responsibility of the construction and the cost for the allocation of the construction reside with the same party. And so we certainly support the 2/3. We supported the 80% too. But from where we are now, we support the 2/3 in the 2 years. And of course, when it was 80% before, particularly during the housing crisis, we have these open-ended bonds, which is something the engineer's office also has to administer. And so if you're waiting 4, 5, 6 years with 80% because the housing market has crashed, then that's a long-term bond, difficult for them to administer, difficult for the home builders to support. We're in a different circumstance now. We're not asking for 80%. It's 2/3 at this point. So those are just my comment on those things. Other than that, I'll introduce Kenneth Hickey, our road and bridge supervisor. Before I do so, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so the practical difference here is that they said was 0. In other words, the moment they lay that course of asphalt, that period starts. And you're saying that means that we're doing a lot of construction out there that disrupts the roadway. And they're, of course, not finished with it yet. But then you're responsible for the maintenance. That's the problem you're facing.
Exactly correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll introduce Mr. Hickey.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We did have a couple concerns, and we did pass that on to the engineer's office. I just wanted to kind of reiterate it. One was reducing the base course to 2 inches. We're strongly in disagreement with that because we want to have as much base as possible with these larger trucks that are coming through. It's just, there's a lot a lot of stress on our main roads along with our side streets as well. That's one thing that we always want to keep reiterating as well, as these cul-de-sacs, is these heavy trucks going on the side streets as well. But we just wanted to make sure that we had that in your guys' scope as well. Warren County engineers have been strongly helping us out with that. And we will also in disagreement with the homes as well. Just because, raising or lowering that lot count, that's really going to hurt us. I know it's been kind of reiterating, rehashed, but did want to just bring that up to you guys. But that was our two main areas of concern that we had. It's just keeping the structurability, the stability of the asphalt, and having our drainage and gravel aggregate through there as well.
So now are you saying that they disagreed with those points?
They did not. They were agreeing with it, but we just wanted to bring it to you with our attention from our
Because I'm
side.
getting confused when I thought we had agreement on some of these.
Yes, it was under agreement, but we just wanted to bring that to you on our stress and our concerns with that.
I think what Mr. Hickey is referring to, Jonathan Sams again, for the record, is there are certain things that the homeowners association had suggested, and we disagree not with what the engineers suggest. We agree with the engineers. We disagree with those issues with homeowners association, just to feed in our practical experience on those things. So we're in accord with the engineers' recommendations.
And have you calculated costs associated with, what's been your experience in terms of increased costs to the township?
We did, and I don't know.
Last year, I think you prepared numbers for the engineer and sent out.
That's correct.
So last year in Shaker Run, I think we spent $41,000 or $42,000 from the numbers that we prepared on Shaker Run, making repairs related to the issues we're talking about.
So you're
In the
saying
one subdivision.
those directly related to the issues that
That's right.
we're raising here?
That is correct.
That's exactly right. If you recall the picture that I presented the last time we were in with the good clay, the bad clay, and the green, and that one, I think I said it was $6,500 just off the top of my head. It's actually about $13,600 is what that one cost. And there was another repair that was more expensive in the subdivision related to these issues.
But you're saying if the new standards had been in place when Shaker Run was built, you wouldn't have had those maintenance costs?
That's correct. That's correct. Because the pavement was actually, well, you did the repairs. You went out and saw it. You described it.
Yeah, so with that, we had a lot of flexibility underneath that. It did not have a proper stabilization. So what it did is it was flexing. We had to go 2 foot, 24 inches deep, and we still didn't really hit a full solid clay below that. So what we did is actually put the 2 foot just to try to keep the structurability of that road with the hopes of that. We do have multiple other sections throughout the Shaker Run on the entrances, on the other entrance we have, that we're going to have to repair next year, along with doing our base repairs that we have.
And so, and maybe this is not something that's even knowable, because I don't necessarily understand, Jonathan, but I'm just wondering, in last year, if you're saying about 41,000, if the standards that are adopted, that the engineer is putting forward with the changes that are at least agreed to, do you have any idea about what that cost, if last year we were under this proposed standard, where that $41,000 would be?
I can't quantify it. That was one subdivision in 1 year that we pulled those numbers out. Our road and bridge supervisors have taken me around to the subdivisions and have said, look, see what's happening here, you see what's happening here, while in our discussions with the engineers, because, before they convince me to write a letter over engineer Tunison, I want to see what's going on. And so we have deteriorating pavement in relatively new subdivisions because of the pressure that's put on them. And as I understand, that it's an issue of stabilization, so that the pavement doesn't flex. And then then you have an exacerbating issue, and that is you have free flow of water or non-free flow of water that happens. And so you actually have water that will squirt up out of these things that further deteriorate, and then will also freeze and expand and do everything else that deteriorates the pavement. We try to address some of that with cracks and that kind of thing. But yeah, I can't quantify it to a dollar figure. I can say it is a persistent and significant problem throughout the township, and as we are growing, then that dollar figure is going to continue to increase.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, who else? Good morning.
Again, my name's Matt Maines. I'm with the HBA, the president of the Ohio Valley Development Council. So I do want to thank the commissioners for kind of pushing it back and allowing us the time to speak with the engineers, and we appreciate their input and working through us. As I mentioned, there were a couple things in there, for example, the credit for stabilization and enhanced clarity on some of the cores and things like that. So that definitely was a positive. However, we're still fairly concerned because there really was no or little give to the base specification. So the lime stabilization, that's sort of above and beyond what the base pavement costs are. So all of those pavement specs that we discussed earlier are sort of, they were just, we provided a lot of recommendations of what we thought, and they were basically not interested in pursuing those. So we're still running into the same problem where the increased costs are going to result in what we think are some significant obstacles and potentially impeding some progress in Warren County. You know, it's, you know, building remains pretty robust right now, and that's a good thing. And what we're seeing again is, you know, everything, the cost just skyrocketing for us. I would expect all the townships' cost of maintenance to go up simply because the cost of materials for pavement, for asphalt and concrete have just skyrocketed 25–30%, and that's what we're seeing on our roads, and so it's sort of going to kind of fall across. So, you know, we definitely agree that something needed to change. We talked about it. We, you know, worked with the engineers. We agreed to all the base pavement, the gravel under base. We talked a lot about the under drains previously, and we heard loud and clear that sort of the underground drains, they wanted a traditional under drain. And so we sort of agreed to that, and we went through and asked about maybe potential some thinner pavement specifications, some changes in the number of houses for the local streets, and I think all of those were sort of denied. So we acknowledge the county's sort of reluctance and the township's really pushing for a lot of these changes. And so, I mean, really the two things that they've mentioned that we really would like for the commissioners to reconsider are those two aspects of the local streets, raising that from 50 to 100, simply because it would help. The roads are still going to be drastically improved. They still have the gravel underbase. They still have the drains. There's still a thicker, stronger pavement. And it's on some of these roads that are less traveled and on smaller developments. We could sort of try to rein in these costs a little bit. You know, as you saw, I mean, obviously the water service is looking to raise rates, and there's everyone else is raising rates on us right now because things are good. And our concern is that when things aren't so good, then, you know, are we going to be able to handle those costs? So we're just looking for some sort of compromise, and I don't feel like we got a whole lot of compromise out of it.
So I want to make sure I understand, your concern is really if the building should slow down as it did previously in 2008 or so forth, that this would not be sufficient to be able to keep you building.
Well, it's definitely a concern. I mean, it's going to be, you know, our companies are going to look at areas to develop, and they're going to say, where do we want to develop, and where's the cost of housing going to push us to develop? And it's going to push us outside of the county if rates get raised to a point to where it can no longer be competitive. And that's what we're trying to be careful of. We understand that something needed to be done, and the rates are, and the cost of the roads are going to be raised, and we're in agreement with that because, again, we understand all the township's problems, and we think even with these changes, these couple changes that we're proposing, a lot of those problems are gone. It's hard to say if they're completely gone. You know, again, some of those issues that he was talking about in Shaker Run are the lack of the gravel underbase, the lack of the under drains. And those are things that are going to be added still, even with all of these. And those are some of the more substantial roads that are more heavily traveled. And, you know, to a certain point, we're agreeing with all the recommendations. Or as a group, we are agreeing. There's some people that agree less and some people that are all right.
That's the nature of
Yeah,
compromise.
yeah, so we were just looking for some sort of compromise on that base spec, and we thought, you know, going from that 50 homes to 100 homes, you know, we're still getting a vastly improved road, but it could capture a lot of those and pull a lot of the cost down, specifically for the smaller developments, smaller developers, people that aren't able to spread those costs across a bigger development quite as easily. It becomes much harder when there's less homes, and this would help it out. And then the other one was the bonding issue. As you mentioned, our bonding, the current bonding is, we're just wanting to discard any changes and keep consistent with the current bonding. Again, the roads are going to be improved.
What is the current bond?
The current bonding is, we have a performance bond when subdivisions are finished. And what that means is, as soon as the pavement is put down, the performance bond is reduced to a maintenance bond, and it's 2 years for the maintenance bond. So it's 2 years from the time we put the surface course down. Now, some developers will put the surface course down right
You know
away.
what he said? He said that, so I want you to respond to their comment about that. So he was saying, you put down this course, and then you put in a lot of construction going on that adversely affects it.
So, but again, the pavement specification is designed to accommodate the weight of the trucks, the weight. So, I mean, I think it's a flawed argument to say that the pavement design's not designed to take the construction traffic. Now, if we're using street trucks that are too heavy, or they're doing something, or the construction is doing something that they shouldn't be on those roads, like putting out outriggers or something like that, so it's tearing up the road, that's a separate issue. But if they're following the, you know, the pavement design's designed to, you know, hold the amount of weight that those trucks are bringing in. And so it's, you know, on one side, they're saying the under drain is really the problem, and the gravel base and all of those, and we're agreeing with those, so the roads are much improved now. I mean, what we're saying is, okay, let's see if the new specs, new pavement design is working before we just throw everything in the kitchen sink to fix a problem. It's, again, I don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, $200,000 to fix a $100,000 problem when we could spend a little less and fix that problem.
Okay, so if you increase the specifications with how you build the road the way they've wanted, I think you've reached some agreement on that, correct?
Yeah.
And when you then compare, because obviously one of the things that we're interested in not only is having good standards, but accommodating your interests, the home builder's interest to have standards that are consistent. And so obviously where you decide to build homes, where you go is competing with other areas that you're building into in other counties. So we heard a lot about that last time.
Right.
As you know. And you guys were sort of favoring the way Kenton County was doing things, which was an improvement. They actually used that too as an example of why we wanted to do something. But then they wanted to have higher standards than that, and they were referring, I guess, to Delaware County maybe, and Greene County, was that the two that I think they mentioned?
Yeah.
My recollection is those are the two. But I'm not sure. Any event, is it your position that you want to be consistent with, say, Kenton County, which is an improvement over what is currently the case, but you don't want to do what they're doing in Delaware and Greene County?
I can't exactly speak to Delaware and Greene County. I'm not too familiar with them.
Okay, and I'm not even sure that I'm using the right example.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm familiar with the counties around here. We
So
would
what-
want to be
at the end of the
consistent with
day-
the bonding periods of the counties around here, which is
And what are
really
the bonding periods for Hamilton County, or for Claremont County, or Butler County?
I'm not sure, oh, well, Claremont and Butler, I think are 2 year. Someone else, I believe they are 2 years.
Well,
I know
but
Kent
are
County,
their
for instance,
standards different from what is being proposed?
these standards are the current pavement spec is similar to Claremont and Butler. Well, Butler has the under drains added, and the engineers would probably be able to answer this, probably a little better than me. I know
Yeah.
it's consistent,
I
the
mean-
current design's consistent, and so this pavement spec is kind of above and beyond, well above and beyond. I'll tell you, Kenton County, for instance, I know we use them as example, they don't have a bonding period on their road, or they don't have a maintenance bond period for their roads.
Yeah.
And I don't
I
necessarily
mean,
know.
I understand why you all want to put Kenton County in here. I just don't think Kenton County's terribly relevant.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
other than the fact that you all made an investment because, in Kenton County, because you wanted to say, look, we're for doing something, but let's do something that's economically,
And the
you know,
reason
more
we leaned on
economically
Kenton County
reasonable.
was because they added that under gravel and the under drains, and we all agreed that that is about, and I think we're all in agreement that that's critical to the
Fisher Homes
performance.
did some study there, right?
That's what we're
Yes,
talking
yes.
about.
I know, but the engineer, the people who are proposing the changes here, our engineering office, they were using Kenton County as an example, they were pointing to that.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess what I'm saying is within the road standards that everybody's sort of in agreement with, that's just not the issue. The issues that seem to remain are the number and the bonding, for which I think the comparison around the region is the one that makes sense in those issues, right?
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated and probably over my head in some ways that, you know, what they're looking for is a strength number for the pavement. So we went in with some offers with some recommendations to reduce pavement specs and maintain a strength number, but anything less than what they currently sort of had calculated was not going to work, even though it may be it's well above what it is. And so we're boiled down to this point at this, just trying to find some sort of compromise to kind of pull back the costs a little bit for us. And I mean, it's really, we went here and they kind of got knocked down. We're just looking for something, some
I
sort of
totally
compromise.
appreciate your point of view here, and I guess it's like, you know, I'm not an engineer, I rely on our professional engineer to be able to give advice and counsel around to what makes smart engineering sense, and having the townships, not just Turtle Creek Township, but all the townships have been here and weighing in on this, are sort of verifying what the county engineer is saying. So they're saying, we've got a problem, we've got to fix the problem, here's our expertise around how to fix the problem, and you have these local governments verifying, yes, this is a problem, and it's costing us a lot of money. So we hear them and we want to address it. And then we understand where the Home Builders Association comes in and says, okay, we're doing this, if we're to do this, we're taking on increased costs, and that has ramifications to us as home builders, where we may choose to build someplace else and not in your county because it's more affordable to build someplace else, or you know, we may go out of business and we can no longer bear these costs. So I understand what it is you're saying, and so we asked then for there to be some conversation to try to do that. And I hear you, that while there's been some accommodation, it's not really getting to some of the things that are adding, you know, the costs onto it. But as I've heard, it's sort of like there's agreement on these other issues, but it's this bonding issue, and it's the number of, how do you describe it? It's the number of
homes for the
lot
local
counts
street.
in there before it becomes important. And I guess I'm saying is if there's agreement on what the substrate, what the road should look like, with reluctant agreement, I'll give you, but if there's agreement on that, then how are we to consider these other two things? And I'm simply saying, it seems reasonable to me to then look at our surrounding counties in Ohio to say, well, what are those surrounding counties gonna do, doing? Is that a wrong way for me to be evaluating this question?
Well, I think if you looked at the surrounding counties, even with these compromises I'm suggesting, it's much more expensive and intensive with these proposals than the surrounding counties. The surrounding counties have, similar to the current bonding periods that we have, which I'm asking to kind of stay with, the pavement specs of certainly Claremont and Butler, it's much more.
Yeah, but there's already agreement on those issues, albeit reluctant. We've already agreed that we needed to do something. You all.
I guess what I'm saying is that these, and again, we boiled it down to just a couple things, just trying to find a compromise, is that these, we feel like it's still achieving what is being asked, which is a vastly improved road specification, and it's just helping. Specifically, some of these are probably less of an impact on bigger developers and more of an impact on smaller developers and smaller communities.
Well, what's the practical, real-world impact of the difference between what you're suggesting, what they're suggesting? Explain to me what that impact is and how it's because I'm sure that the problem ultimately is cost, but explain to me why they're so animated to do what they're suggesting and you're contrary to it. What's the practical difference?
Well, I think, so for the roads specification, for the local roads versus that number there, it's how many, we can put the road spec for that local road on more houses, on more developments, on more of the roads, and it pulls back the cost. I think, again, there's a number that they're trying to reach that's at pavement strength, and it's, there's no give on that number, and we're just asking to give a little bit on that number, even with a drastically improved road. And that was just one area that we found. As far as the bonding is one of those where it's just, especially for smaller builders and developers, it's much more expensive for them to get bonds, and to add an additional burden sort of on top of the increased road specs is just, it's just not exactly fair. We're asking for something that's consistent with what developing in other places around the tri-state.
Okay, so when you're using the word fair in comparison to what other people are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what are other people doing?
The other county, Butler and Claremont, are similar to what's currently in place, which is a 2-year maintenance bond from the time you put down the pavement. The Northern Kentucky, they don't have maintenance bonding periods.
Okay, and what about Hamilton County?
I'm not sure. Do you guys know Hamilton County? I think they're 2 years, but I can't say for sure.
2 years from the time you put the pavement down?
From the time you put the surface course down, yes.
Right. So, and the current proposal is what now?
The current proposal is, it's from the time you put the surface course down and when
And the
two-thirds,
60.
and when 2/3 of the homes are built.
Okay, and so they're trying to do that, and they said it used to be 80%. Do you recall that?
That was before my time and working in the area, so.
Well, I guess the point they're making is it used to be more stringent, and you lived with it, or the home builders did. I don't know if that's true or not, I just don't know. So they want it measured by occupancy rates, that's 67%. And the reason why they want occupancy rates is because I believe what they're saying is the construction traffic with lots of these concrete trucks, et cetera, is just harder on the road and creates more of a maintenance problem. I think that's what I'm hearing. And that's why they want to have not just merely when you put that course of asphalt down, but you have an occupancy rate. So speak to me about that. do they have a legitimate point there or not?
I mean, generally, what we're seeing is when you see the reason for the maintenance period is because you're seeing road failures because of the,
Construction traffic is
because
what
of
they're
the,
worried with.
well, because of a failure in the design or implementation
Well, I
of
think
the
that that's
roads.
part of it. I think and that's what I think you guys have come to some agreement on.
Right.
Is some of those construction underground, and that helps, obviously. I mean, what you're saying is, hey, look, when we've given on that, that means when we put that final course of asphalt or whatever down, we're putting it down on a road that's better. And therefore, even with the construction traffic or whatever is going on out there, it shouldn't have that failure rate. So they want to get those new standards for construction, and they want to get this, occupancy rate thing related to your, bond and all that kind of stuff. So they want to have that too. And I guess my question to you is there some reason why the occupancy rate and this percentage of 67% is not a legitimate point with regard to what you're doing out there with traffic that causes a deterioration in the road or an impact on the road, where they don't want to be the ones that are responsible for that. I think that's what they're saying, is they want you guys who are still building, if it's under 67%, to be responsible to maintain it. That's what they want, correct?
Well, yeah, I understand, and they want to protect their asset as long as they can, and when it's on the builder or the developer to maintain and control that. So I understand where their thought process is for that. What we're saying is the increased road specs fixing the problem, and then you're adding sort of double insurance on top of it. And sure, again, if money was no object, it would be fine, but it's adding cost for someone to hold those bonds for that period of time when, that's sort of out of the norm, at least in the area currently, is for builders and developers to hold a bond for that long. Right now, with a development, it could be the same amount of time as any other time. But, if things slow down and all of a sudden there's more homes, there's not, you could be looking at a small builder or a small developer holding bonds for 5+ years, and that's what the community is concerned about, is the cost of that. It may not be building traffic, it may just be routine maintenance, and that's why the maintenance bond is in place, because the failures are generally seen because of a failure, and like I said, the failure in the implementation of the roads. So those failures are seen in those first 2 years because water gets under the pavement, it degrades it, and that's when you see the failures. That's the reason why there's a 2-year maintenance period on it. Once the road's designed and stable, it should be whatever the lifespan of that road is. And again, we, would rely on the townships and the counties to maintain that roads on their, standard intervals and replace the roads when they're meant to be replaced. So the failure should be seen in that maintenance period if the roads were built incorrectly, which is why the maintenance period is in place. Not necessarily to fix. If a contractor is going out there and tearing up roads, that's a different issue. Or if they're doing something they shouldn't be.
Tom, I guess I'd just say, I appreciate the fact that the parties, went together at our request to try to come up with some compromise, and some compromises were reached. I don't know that I would be prepared to make a decision on this, because now I have a lot more questions than answers, quite frankly, though those questions are narrowing in scope, because there are some issues that have, I wouldn't say been completely taken off the table, but there's been some compromise on some of those issues. I personally want to be able to talk with the engineer's office around a host of things.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think David needs to be involved with this too.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if we were to continue the hearing, not for another month, for just 2 weeks, to be able to, I don't want to take the pressure off, because the engineer's office spoke very clearly a month ago about the need to be able to make a decision because of the building season, and so I want to be sensitive of that. But I would suggest that perhaps we continue this to November 7th at 9:15, if you're comfortable with that. And I would need to take a motion, unless the engineer objects to that. I'm sorry? This room is not a polling place.
No,
No.
it is an election day.
Yeah, it is election day.
All right.
Neil, do you have any objection to that?
All right, then I'll make a motion that we reconvene the hearing on November 7th.
Second, roll call, please.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Okay, that was clear as mud. Moving on to the next item of agenda is a work session with Steve Hunt, who is here representing W. Brisbane Corporation. Good morning, and would you state your name and address for the record, please?
Stephen Hunt, attorney with Aronoff, Rosen and Hunt for the developer. And this will be fairly quick. So, little background. I've been on this issue for a long time. I represent the developer of the subdivision in Hamilton Township known as Village on the Green, a major development. And in connection with the development of that subdivision, the county required the developer to oversize the lift station and the force main to accommodate approximately maybe another 1,000 acres, okay? And, because this was done 20 years ago. And the cost to the developer of oversizing was an additional $320,000 approximately. And we entered into a reimbursement agreement that as additional people tapped in, the money would be paid back to the developer. And the county has extended that development period for a number of times, and the last period just expired last week, okay? And to date, the developer's been reimbursed about $242,000 of the $300,000, so there's about $75,000 to go. And the last extension said that was the last extension. And that probably would have been fine if it hadn't been for COVID, and we kind of got a breakdown. So bottom line, we're just asking for a 3-year extension, and that would be it. And then he should be able to get his $75,000 back, and we'd be done.
And so there's no opportunity for him to collect excess? Would only be what that amount is?
No, it would be limited to what he advanced at the requirement of the county.
Should we have a problem with that request?
Well, I think you should hear from what impact it has on the sewer department, but kudos to Steve. Turn this on. Any good lawyer points out the weaknesses in his case, and Steve admitted the weakness in his case, that the 2015 resolution said, this is it. We don't want to see you again.
All right.
So, that's true.
With that being said, he pointed that out, so I'll give him kudos for that. So I would recommend that you hear from the sewer department.
Great. Come on down. You're the next contestant.
Okay.
So our rules and regulations, you know, I pulled them up when I was sitting here looking at it, and our rules and regulations call it a 10-year reimbursement period. And so our concern is that you're setting a standard then to, you know, to change that.
So is there a reasonable amount of time taking into consideration of COVID? I mean, we didn't anticipate a global pandemic. There was some impact during that period of time. Is there some extension that wouldn't be creating a unlimited opportunity, but rather is reflective of what the economics
This
perhaps
would be,
were?
this would be the, you know, if I'm looking at this correct, this would be like the 4th extension.
I hear what you're
So-
saying, but.
And then,
but
because
the- But the
it was extended.
commission made the decision in 2015 to make the extension until a week ago. Like, that was decided in 2015. I think there's probably some period of time in that extension that was made that is reasonable to suggest that the opportunity wasn't fully there, given COVID. Is
So,
that a month?
I guess our argument would be, when you look at the initial period, which goes back to January 11th, 2000, all right? So that's 23 years ago. So, so in that time period, you know, there's been a couple things that have happened. There was a recession in 2009. And then you had COVID, and then you had so you can always make these arguments that there are things that are happening, but surely in those 23 years, there were 10 good years of development that the developer received reimbursement. So the intention is, in the rules and regulations, that, there's 10 years that they can receive reimbursement. I think if you look over the past 23 years, you can find 10 good years at Warren County where housing was strong and that they could receive reimbursement. So the intention is that, yes, if you want to put this development in, you're putting it at your own risk, that there's no guarantee that you're going to get 100% reimbursement. And our rules call that out.
I get
you
that.
know.
I
And so I
mean, I
think the
understand
housing
that.
market here in Warren County has been extremely strong, all right? And that there's nothing that, there was no guarantee that they would be reimbursed. So,
I understand
in
that.
light of everything that we have on the books from the improvements, our recommendation would be to let this expire, because I think it does set a bad precedent moving forward.
Well, regardless of precedent, they put in the cost of the force main and the pump station, is that right?
That is correct, they did.
And we were allowing them to get reimbursed for that over a period of time, and that reimbursement was coming how? When a home was built, they were getting a marginal reimbursement?
Yes, when a builder constructs a home and pays a tap fee or connection fee to Warren County, we collect a nominal fee on top of that, and then we take that fee and reimburse it back.
All right, so how much has the builder been reimbursed to date in the $317,000?
300, so the, out-of-pocket was 317, and they have been paid $242,000.
Okay, so there's about $100,000 difference.
There's $75,000 is the margin, and that's, I believe, what Mr. Hunt brought up, is $75,000.
Okay, $75,000 difference, and so they want to have an extension, and I take it that, how many homes have not yet been built so that would collect the $75,000?
There was, to date, there's been 620 payments made, so.
How many, if we extend this again, how many homes would have to tap in order to
Steve, did you-
get them?
Well, so it's, 1,000 would be 3 homes, so I guess 200 and some homes.
How many homes are there out in the area that's possible for?
Well, if I can jump in.
Yeah, sure, please jump in, because I guess this isn't you did this for a pretty expansive territory then?
Yes, so make sure you understand the one part. The 300 and, whatever it was, 300 and,
17.
$20,000 he spent. That wasn't the cost of doing the oversizing for his project. That was for other acreage that he did have no ownership over, 1,000 acres, so that down the road, that plant would be bigger, the pump station, and other developers and builders could tap
So
into
he
it.
was doing something that was not merely for his development, he was doing something that was required of him for future developments off his property. And you're collecting the reimbursement for that. So the question is it fair for the government to give more time on other property, not his development, but on other development property, is that right?
Exactly.
So
Because
I
his
don't-
development was completed and he got all his money.
Yeah,
from
sure, I get
right.
that. So he puts in basically a utility payment here for other land to use and sized for it, not his own, but for them, and it's the reimbursement that's happening based upon the development of that other property that's at issue.
I'm not quite sure that's the case.
Well, that's my question.
The county contributed funds into that project for the oversight.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah, but he paid for the oversizing, he paid for the lift station and all that for the extent of his project. It was the additional 1,000 acres that the county wanted, and that's where the reimbursement was.
You're saying that the county contributed no money for the construction of that additional capacity?
I think in there, it's maybe
I wasn't here at
maybe
the
10 or
time.
20,000. I could probably answer in about 2 minutes. It's in my file.
I find that hard to believe, because usually when we ask for oversizing,
Yeah.
we reimburse the developer for the additional capacity.
Yeah,
But
it
all-
was a small portion. I can tell you in a, if you want to.
Yeah, I just,
I mean, this seems to be a germane point. I mean, even if the county contributed to it, is there any part of the oversizing that the developer contributed to that in the hopes of having those costs recovered over a period of time?
that's my only point.
Yeah.
My only point is that, and it seems to me, I was here, I don't remember this, remarkably. I don't remember this either. Okay? It's just, okay, obviously.
It
I
was
do
one
not
of your
remember
first, it was probably one of your first votes.
Well, it's in the first year. Okay, but, so, I didn't have any past history, and I can see the language that this is, and courts do this to me all the time too, by the way. When they give me an extension, they say, this is the final last, you're not gonna get another extension. But, maybe I should.
They're trying to answer the question that you asked, which I think is the right question. So there was $18,890 in county contributions and $317,257.75.
It's not million.
Yeah,
Yeah,
1,000,
yeah.
yeah. That's what I just found too.
$317,257.75.
Right.
The $18,890 may have been because the county at one point reduced that service area. So that, I think there was a reduction in the number of homes. Now,
That's correct.
so I think that's what that $18,000.
You see, but what is wrong with us giving an extension to allow them to be reimbursed for something that they put in for something outside of their project? Just in terms of just pure looking at the fairness of how government should operate with people, what's wrong with allowing them the time to collect that? So that's right, that's my question. So they're not doing this.
You guys can both be up there.
That
I
is
just want
totally
you
a
to
policy decision by the
make sure
county
it's
commissioners,
right.
but the idea is that if you're gonna go out there and develop this, that you're taking on that risk. So you're
Yeah,
taking
I
on that.
think
But he's
that's
taking on risk
totally
from
fair,
somebody
but you're
else.
taking on the risk beyond, I mean, that's the point we're trying to get at. It's one thing for the developer to take on the risk of the parcel of land that they are responsible for developing. It's another thing through the negotiation with the county because of prospective growth, and I understand why we might ask a developer to participate in building infrastructure much larger than they would otherwise need to build, because it's in the broader public interest, and that's why we allow them the ability to recover.
The reimbursement traditionally has been for, I guess it is for oversizing. I'd have to think, I'd have to think through this. It's for the
I mean-
oversizing. So they're responsible for constructing, so if they lack sewer service or whatever, they want to build a development, they have to spend their own investment to build the water lines and the sewer lines. And they recover those costs through the cost of their lots. So, whenever a developer builds a subdivision, the cost of their infrastructure is on there.
Right.
So this reimbursement, I guess, would be, Bruce, you were there at this time, this would have been truly for the oversizing?
Correct.
And see, and therein lies my issue, is that we're really, I don't believe that it is the role of government to get a windfall from these developers who are basically doing specifications and building for an oversized matter for a development that's not theirs. I mean, they should be responsible for what they're doing on their development, but I think that given the timing of this, that I don't have a problem with allowing them more time to collect money for an improvement they made for something that's off their property, based upon our request that they do that.
May I suggest that you ask a question to Chris about what impact, there's a reason the rules and regulations put a 10-year limitation on it. And I would think that would be because this is an accounting nightmare. Somebody has to, in his department, devote time and effort into tracking this. And that's the reason for the 10-year limitation. Statute allows it to be done without a time limitation, but there's a rule for that regulation. And for it to continue to be extended and extended and extended, somebody over there has got to devote a certain amount of time to the accounting of this, put some effort in it. I don't know to what extent he does.
how
So what
difficult is that?
impact is it on your department to extend this, if any?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, there's some administrative fee that we incur, but it is, it's part of our normal process, daily operation. So when we take in a tap fee and connection fee and any other fees, we track those and have to allocate those to the appropriate buckets.
And
what they get
disperse it
funded
to
and
Mr.
disperse it.
Brisbane.
Yeah, so I mean, that's typically what we do on a large variety of stuff. We don't run assessments and all that. So it is something that is worked into our normal operations. But typically the reimbursement that we have, and I'm not sure what this reimbursement was totally for, because typically when we do a reimbursement, it's because a developer is extending service to a parcel that doesn't have service. And then if somebody connects in that line, then they get reimbursed. That's typically how reimbursement works.
But in this
in
case,
this
you
is-
just
but
wanted
this is-
bigger
this is-
infrastructure because you were anticipating more flow into the infrastructure.
This is oversizing. So I'm not sure this is, I'm not exactly sure what this reimbursement was for. I have to look into it. So if it was reimbursement for oversizing, then I can see your argument.
Okay, well, I'll
But
tell
if
you
it's
what.
reimbursement just to get service to this property, then I would be like,
Well, why don't you go and research that topic and come back to us, because I'm prepared to give him his extension.
too.
But if you want to do some research that's relevant, I'll give you the time to do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm gonna vote to give him his extension.
Me too.
let me do some research.
Hey, you got a week.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got a week. We're gonna bring this up next week.
Very good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that acceptable to you? Is that resolution?
I should come back next meeting, correct?
If
If you like.
All right, thank you so much for your.
All right.
You're welcome. Okay, next on the agenda is to deliberate in private with legal counsel for the decision on the site plan review application of Shaker Woods in Turtle Creek Township.
Okay, do we have to make a motion to adjourn to that, or
No.
what?
Nope.
So
That's
now
just what we're gonna
adjourning the
do.
meeting?
That's just what we're gonna do. We can come back and adjourn it.
Okay,
Recess?
we're good.
So recess, yeah.
Okay.